coverings such as skin and hair, skeletal, which includes all bones and joints, muscular, which is responsible for the movement of the human body, nervous, which is a complex network of neurons and cells that carry messages to and from the brain and spinal cord to various parts of the body, endocrine, which is a system of glands that make hormones, cardiovascular, which relates to your heart, lymphatic or immune, which protects your body from diseases or infections, respiratory, which helps you breathe, digestive, which breaks down nutrients for your body to absorb, urinary or excretory, which filters blood and creates urine, reproductive, which is different for a female and male. And the body system that we'll be focusing on today is muscular.
There are three types of muscles, and they are the cardiac muscles, the skeletal muscles, and the smooth muscles. Cardiac muscle is responsible for keeping your heart beating. So this muscle is involuntary because it works using its own stimuli, meaning you don't have to tell your heart to beat or tell the muscles around your heart to contract or release. It does it on its own. Smooth muscle is muscle that lines your internal organs. An example of where smooth muscle can be found would be in your stomach. Smooth muscle is there to move the substances inside your organs, and this muscle is also involuntary because these muscles work on its own. The third type of muscle is the skeletal muscles, and these muscles are usually attached to skeletal bone, and these muscles let you move. These muscles are voluntary because you control them consciously. So here's more information on skeletal muscles. So these muscles produce movement. They let you stay in a certain position. They support your soft tissues. These muscles also guard the entrances or exits of your body. An example of this would be swallowing, and that would be a conscious movement, and that's voluntary. And lastly, these muscles also maintain your body temperature. So when you're cold, you might notice that you start shivering, and that's your body trying to warm you up. Now I'm going to pass it on to Anika.
Okay, so we're going to start off with biceps. Biceps are skeletal muscles located on the upper frontal upper arm. It has two main tendons that attaches it to the bones. They're the little white, almost mini bones, but they're actually really strong pieces of tissue. So what do biceps do? They come to use when you pull upward. So when you say pull or lift things, and it also comes into use when you lift your shoulders. Some exercises that use biceps are push-ups, upward curls with dumbbells, which is like holding weights and then pulling them up to your chest, chin-ups, and many more. So you can do whichever one suits you. Biceps are like the muscles that when you flex, it's usually what people show off, but they do not determine all of your strength. So yeah, and now we're going to move on to triceps.
Now moving on to the triceps. Triceps are a large muscle at the back of the upper arm and are just below the socket of the scapula, or the shoulder blade. The longer name for the triceps muscle is triceps brachii, which is Latin for the three-headed muscle of the arm. It got this name because there are three parts of the triceps muscle: the medial, lateral, and the long head. You can see this clearly labeled in the bottom right picture. The main function of the triceps muscle is to help humans extend their elbow joint or straighten their arm, and it acts as an antagonist of the biceps and brachialis. Additionally, it helps to stabilize our shoulder. How does it do this? Well, our triceps make sure that the head of our humerus bone in our shoulder joint is in the correct position. There are many exercises that both use and help build our triceps muscles. First, we have diamond push-ups, which is like a normal push-up, except you have to position your hands and fingers into a diamond shape. Standard push-ups are great too, but diamond push-ups are more of a challenge. Also, exercises like tricep dips and exercises involving the bench press help stimulate the growth of our triceps muscles. Some fun facts of the triceps include them making up 2/3 of the muscle in your arm and being twice as big as the bicep muscles. Now let's move on to the deltoids.
We will now talk about deltoids. Deltoids are large triangular muscles which are located in the upper arm and shoulder. They lie over the glenohumeral joint and are shaped like an equilateral triangle. They help prevent any dislocation of the head and allow shoulder abduction, which basically means that they allow you to move your shoulder away from your body. Deltoids are the reason that you can move your arm without ruining the stability of your upper arm and shoulder. Some exercises to build and strengthen your deltoids are the walking plank, upright row, anterior deltoid raise, and the Callahan press. Now for a fun fact. Deltoids actually have 3 heads, meaning that they're made up of 3 different portions, each of which allow different movements within the upper arm and shoulder. 3 portions are the anterior deltoid, lateral deltoid, and posterior deltoid. That's all for the deltoids.
All right, so now we're going to talk about the abdominal muscles. So basically, the abdominal muscles are a large group of muscles that are located in the front of your abdomen, as you can see in the picture on the left. And basically, they are located between your ribs and pelvis on the front of your body. Their main functions are to support your torso, allow movement throughout your body, and to hold organs in place by regulating your abdominal pressure. Some exercises that target these muscles include Pilates, medicine ball, and crunches, but there are many more, including planks and mountain climbers. Some nicknames of these muscles, and you've probably heard them, include six-pack and abs. So basically, if you hear someone talking about about their six-pack or abs, you know they're talking about their abdominal muscles. All right, so now we're going to move on to hamstrings.
The hamstrings are tendons at the back of your thighs that attach the large thigh muscle to the bone. Your hamstrings are located at the back of your thighs from your hip to just below your knee. The hamstrings muscles include the biceps femoris, semimembranosus, and semitendinosus. The main function of your hamstrings is to bend your knees. This movement is performed during daily activities such as walking, running, climbing stairs, and jumping. Your hamstrings also help rotate your lower leg. 2 hamstrings attached to the inside of your knee help rotate your lower leg inward. The 3rd hamstring attached to the outer border of your knee rotates your lower leg outward. These movements fine-tune the position of your lower legs as you walk. Your hamstrings also function like brakes on a car to slow the speed at which you swing your leg forward while kicking or running. In addition, your hamstrings perform hip extension that assists your hamstrings with the motion of sitting to standing. Some exercises you can do to strengthen your hamstrings are air squats, glute bridges, and reverse planks. However, there are plenty of other exercises that would also suffice. Now let's move on to the next muscle.
So now we have the gastrocnemius muscle. By definition, it is the chief muscle of the calf of the leg, which flexes the knee and the foot. But it's simply the upper large chunk of muscle in your calves that forms a bulge, and there are 2 parts or heads of the muscle. The gastrocnemius muscle is located on the top portion of your calves, as you see on the image. Along with the soleus muscle under the gastrocnemius muscle, it helps us flex our foot at the ankle joint and knee joint away from our legs. And we use the gastrocnemius muscle when we run, jump, or quickly move our legs. And some fun facts is that it's the largest muscle below our knee, and you can feel the gastrocnemius muscle working when you tippy toe. Now, let's go on to quadriceps.
Okay, hi everyone. So we'll be going over quadriceps. I'm pretty sure most of you have heard of this term in your PE class and emphasized by PE teachers. In fact, most of you have done exercises, especially running, that requires the quadricep. So to give a brief overview of the quadricep, it is basically a large flesh of muscle on your upper thigh covering the front and sides as shown in the picture. By definition, it is a large muscle at the front of the thigh, which is divided into 4 distinct portions and acts to extend the leg. The quadricep includes 4 different parts, which is rectus femoris, vastus lateralis, vastus medialis, and vastus intermedius. So the location is pretty familiar with most of you guys. It is located below your lower abdomen and above your front kneecap, again, as you can see in the picture. So you may be wondering why the quadricep is important. Well, it is pretty self-explanatory, and in short, it is to help stabilize you to enable to walk in your everyday life, which is really crucial, especially when transporting from one place to another. So here are some exercises that require the quadriceps and targets these muscles. They include squats, lunges, jump squats, running, walking, and more. And here's a fun fact. So the reason why quadriceps are called quadriceps is because in the name, the first four letters, which says quad, basically quad means four. Like I said before, there are four different parts of the quadriceps. And yeah, that's about it. That's why it's named quadricep. All right, so I hope you guys learned something interesting. We'll be moving on to the gluteus maximus.
So the next muscle in the muscular system is the gluteus maximus. The gluteus maximus is the main extensor muscle of the hip. It is the largest and outermost of the three gluteal muscles and contributes to the hips. It is a thick, fleshy muscle and it is connected to the tailbone and other surrounding bones. Moving on to the location, the gluteus maximus is located at the surface of the buttocks. It originates at the hip bones and at the base of the spine. The function of the gluteus maximus is working alongside other muscles to extend the hip. Additionally, the gluteus maximus works with other muscles to externally rotate the hip. Some exercises that use the gluteus maximus are the two-leg bridge, which is a hip extension done by lying on the floor and lifting the hips off the floor. There is also a Cook hip lift, which is done by lying on the back and flexing your hip by taking one knee to the chest. Next is a reverse lunge. A reverse lunge is done by stepping backwards with one of your legs. Another exercise is a side plank with hip abduction, which is done by starting in a side plank position and lifting the top leg towards the ceiling. Lastly, the single leg squat. A single leg squat is essentially a squat just done by holding one leg out. Now, a fun fact about the gluteus maximus muscle is that it is the largest and most powerful muscle working against gravity. It might not seem like it, but it is pretty clear how big the muscle is when you think about how it is able to help move your hips and thighs while keeping your torso upright. That sums up the gluteus maximus muscle, and next is the trapezius.
Next is the trapezius. So what is the trapezius? It's a large back muscle that resembles a trapezoid, which is where it got its name. It's divided into three parts: upper, lower, and middle. Now, where's this muscle located? The trapezius is located in the upper back, as shown in the picture. It extends over the back of the neck and shoulders. The function of the trapezius is to stabilize posture, and it also acts as a movement muscle. It links the dorsal vertebrae of the spine, scapula, clavicles, and ribs. Each part of the trapezius has a different role. The upper part is the part that goes across the top of your shoulders. It can bring your shoulder girdle up, and it can also extend, tilt, and rotate your neck. The lower part is the part that stabilizes and brings your shoulder girdle down, so just the opposite function of the upper part. The middle part helps bring the shoulder blades back, and it also helps stabilize certain arm movements. Exercises that use the trapezius include the shoulder shrug or any variation of the shrug, shoulder blade squeezes, push-ups, face pulls, and rowing exercises such as the upright row. Lastly, the nickname for the trapezius is called the traps. That's all for this muscle, and next we'll be moving on to the Latissimus Dorsi.
Now we move on to another muscle, which is very close to the trapezius, which we just talked about. Latissimus dorsi, also known as your lats, are a large muscle located in your mid to lower back. It is a large and flat muscle which stretches to the sides under the armpits and is covered partially by the trapezius. This muscle takes part in extension, adduction, flexion from extended position, horizontal extension, and internal rotation of the shoulder joint. Basically, many of the movements of the shoulder joint. And also, it supports your back. The exercises that use the latissimus dorsi are the downward motion of pull-ups, rows, and lat pulls, all with their corresponding variations. Now we move on to the front side, the Pectoralis Major.
The pectoralis major is a strong fan-shaped muscle. In Latin, pectus means breast, so the pectoralis underlies the breast and makes up a bulk of the chest muscle. The pectoralis consists of three parts: the clavicular, which is located near your clavicle, also known as your collarbone, the sternocostal, which is located near your sternum, also known as the middle of your chest, and lastly, the abdominal, which is located near your stomach. The function of the pectoralis major varies according to its different parts. The clavicular head flexes the humerus, while the sternocostal head adducts the humerus, but as a whole, the main function of this muscle is the adduction and medial rotation of the humerus. Some exercises that you could perform to strengthen the pectoralis major includes push-ups, bench press, and chest dips. So now let's move on to the cardiac muscle.
Hi, next up we're going to be talking about the cardiac muscle. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the word cardiac. The word cardiac means something that is related to the heart. In this case, it's the heart muscle. This muscle lies in between your endocardium and your epicardium, which is basically the walls and valves of your heart. This is where individual cardiac muscle cells are arranged in bundles that form a spiral pattern in the walls and valves of your heart. The main function of the cardiac muscle is to coordinate that allow your heart to these actions involuntary.
You're kind of like very much lagging.
Okay, I think Sarah might have some technical issues. I can go over the slide really quickly. The cardiac muscle, kind of like Kelly mentioned a little bit earlier, it's an involuntary muscle, so you don't have to tell it to move. So cardiac is it's related to the heart. That's what kind of the root kind of means. And so the muscle is between the endocardium and the epicardium, which is basically the walls and the valves of the heart. And the individual cardiac muscle cells are arranged in bundles that form a spiral pattern in the wall and the valves of the heart. And the main function of the cardiac muscle is to coordinate the contractions that allow your heart to pump your blood through your circulatory system. And these actions are involuntary, kind of like I mentioned before, so you do not do it consciously. And some exercises that you can do to strengthen your cardiac muscle is walking, swimming, cycling, and yoga.